Hi everyone, I'm Gerald and this is Jody. We're happy to be back with community group videos for you. We had really good feedback from the last season we did that just ended in December. And this week we're diving into the topic of honor.
This week, Joel read a passage from Mark 6, 2 through 4. And so grab whatever translation you have or your iPhone, whatever you use to read your Bible, and together in your group, just read aloud this passage. Welcome back. And so Gerald and I, before filming began, we were actually talking, like, what does honor actually mean? Does it have the same meaning in the church as it does in the world at large? And so the first couple things that came to me was, I thought of Pride and Prejudice, and I thought of the Titanic, right? They talked of a lot in the Titanic about, like, the honorable men. They put the women and the children in, and they stood back and went down with the boat. Or in Pride and Prejudice, you have Mr. Darcy, who seems like he's proud, actually ends up being like the really good guy who's an honorable man, and he fixes things quietly behind the scene and allows himself to be seen, for actually not who he was. But what are your thoughts, Gerald?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, it's funny. I read the question that we had prepared before, and I thought, well, what does honor mean, and how does it mean when we're talking about God and in the Bible?
Yeah.
And I think the first picture that comes to mind is something to do with reverence and like esteem of someone. But then I started thinking about the sermon that Joel gave us, and I was thinking, well, how does it fit? That doesn't sound like maybe the full picture of what Joel was getting at. So it was interesting to kind of go back and forth. Well, we should probably figure this out before we record the video.
Yeah. So we thought, instead of kind of jumping right into the questions, it's probably good to group up and just hash out some of your thoughts on honor. Is it the same? Is it like, what is your experience with honor, and what does it even mean, the word, to you and when you read it in the Bible? So the first question is, take a second and let's talk about honor. Yeah.
Hopefully you had some good discussion there about your definitions of honor. Maybe they lined up with each other with the group, and maybe they fit with what you were getting from Joel or from the Bible about that definition. Hopefully that was an interesting conversation. You had a story about honor that actually came from the person who led worship, Jen, on this Sunday. And so maybe you can tell us about that story that she had for you.
Okay. If you were at church this Sunday at Crossroads, Jen led worship, and she has for the last year been taking the worship program through Hillsong down in Australia. And we were chatting this week in our kitchen, and she was just sharing with me about how her initial rub with honor happened at Hillsong. That when she got there, she was kind of told, hey, you can go get the tea order for the kind of celebrity musicians. And she was kind of like, what? Like, they can get their own tea. But as the year wore on, and as she learned more and more about the culture within the Hillsong, but also kind of what God was doing in her heart, he was teaching her to be the servant of all. And one of the things that later, as the year went on, she was able to lead preach. And she said that somebody came and brought her tea, because earlier in the week, somebody had come and gotten her tea order. And she realized, oh my goodness, it's not about the necessarily like being this low person on the totem pole. It was about allowing that person to enter into a place of worship so that they weren't distracted by anything, and that people cared for them, and so that they were able to just like zoom in on what they had to do that Sunday. And just God really worked on her heart that whole year, and she talked really reverently about honor and the culture in there, about how they all honor one another with whatever work they're doing. Even though initially it seemed like this person was here and this person was there, she realized that even that position of just bringing the tea was just as honored as being the person that was out on the platform.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So she said the whole year it was just like really beautiful, just how God taught her, and just how they all honored each other in whatever work that they were doing. So I think one of the questions that Joel had written out for us is, How do you see honor and faith working together and being essential pieces for seeing the kingdom of heaven come? And it's kind of a big question, and we don't really actually have the answer to this. So maybe in your groups you'll...
Yeah, we had a few ideas, but we thought actually maybe instead of trying to answer it just you and I, this would be a great opportunity for your groups to discuss it and see what kind of things you come up with.
Yeah. Enjoy.
Welcome back. Hope that discussion was good, and maybe you actually came up with some answers that you and I couldn't come up with. That's a great opportunity there. One of the passages Joel talked about on Sunday came from Galatians 5. So just because it's quick, I'll just read it right here. And it says, "For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command: love your neighbor as yourself."
Yep, that's a big one.
I love that one.
Yeah.
It helps me get past some of my overthinking.
It's like simple and complex. Yeah. It's like a fine wine for those that like wine. What we thought about initially was the difference between rules and grace. And immediately both of us went to parenting. Like just, Yeah,
totally.
It's so interesting. We were chatting about how, even your story.
Yeah, so while Joel was preaching and he mentioned that laughing cow example, immediately I thought of Brielle, my 2-year-old, and she just recently started to like yell back at me. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I taught you how to do that. I taught you that when you really don't want someone to do something, just raise your voice a little higher and speak a little firmer.
Yeah.
And I mean, it usually doesn't work, but now she's using it back on me like, Dad, I really don't want to go to the potty right now, so I'm going to raise my voice and tell you no. And I just felt like, is that like the best way to honor, my child?
Yeah.
It's like, is that the best way to go about trying to get my child to do what I think is best for them? And I just started to reflect on that when Joel was preaching.
Yeah, and as you're speaking, I'm thinking immediately about like intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, like how honor, when nobody's looking, you do the right thing, but our kids catch us.
Totally.
They catch us, they catch everything, and then they play it back. Like we were talking about how it's like having a video camera following you and then playing back like all your worst moments. And like it is so humbling to actually in the day-to-day. And so in your groups, one of the things to talk about is what is the difference between rules and grace? And how does operating in freedom, like honoring to God, let me just try that again. Let me try that question again.
No problem.
How does operating in freedom, honoring to God and one another and self? So thanks, groups, for hanging with us and working through this word of honor with us. We're enjoying ourselves, kind of thinking about it more and taking some time with it. So Gerald has one final question for us this evening.
Yeah, so maybe it actually started to come up in that last discussion, but this is just a focused thing to think about for this coming week. Is this something you can start to lean into? Is there an area in your life that you can surrender and honor God in more, or start to put extra attention to? Just as we honor God, and as that leads into honoring others. So is there one area you want to focus on this week in that area?
Yeah, awesome. And as always, just take some time. Kind of the most important thing is just spend some time praying with one another. And I do think that's a great way to honor one another, but just honoring just what the season that we're in a really authentic way. Because some of us are having a great week and some of us are in the worst week of our life. So just spend some time praying, and thanks so much for hanging with us. And we're enjoying this journey, and we hope you guys are too. So God bless. Have a great week.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you next week.